Chiefs Kingdom, we've got a lot of fascinating news surrounding your Kansas City Chiefs today on the latest episode of the Chiefs Report by Chat Sports. There have been several moves involving the coaching staff, including new interview requests and a couple of fresh hires. But before we break down everything, I want to start with one particular interview request because this one might reveal something much bigger. In fact, it might be pointing toward a draft strategy that the Chiefs are quietly putting together, and it's a strategy that fans are probably going to love. Before we dive into that, though, let me ask you something. If you want to see the Kansas City Chiefs select Jeremiyah Love with the 9th overall pick in the 2026 NFL Draft, go ahead and smash the like button on today's video. The reason I bring up Jeremiyah Love right away isn't random. There's actually a very interesting connection behind the news we're about to discuss. The Chiefs have officially requested an interview with Dan McCullough, a name many of you probably remember. McCullough previously served as Kansas City's running backs coach from 2018 through 2020. Now the organization is exploring the possibility of bringing him back in that exact same role, this time under new offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy. So where does Jeremiyah Love come into the picture here? Well, after leaving Kansas City in 2020, McCullough eventually spent time with the Las Vegas Raiders, which is where he would be coming from if the Chiefs finalize the hire. But in between those stops, he spent the 2022 and 2023 seasons coaching running backs at the University of Notre Dame. And guess who arrived at Notre Dame as a freshman in 2023? Jeremiyah Love. Coincidence? I don't think so. To quote The Incredibles, I think not. When you start connecting the dots, it really looks like the Chiefs could be setting up a bigger plan here. Especially when you remember that Eric Bieniemy is widely considered one of the best running backs coaches in the entire NFL. Bringing him back as offensive coordinator already suggested that Kansas City wanted to refocus on the run game. Now imagine pairing Bieniemy with McCullough again, and then adding the most explosive running back prospect in the 2026 draft. That starts to look like a blueprint. In my opinion, there are two clear priorities emerging here. First, the Chiefs want to re-establish a consistent run game. That's something Andy Reid-led offenses have occasionally struggled with in the past. The passing game has always been elite, but the ground attack hasn't always been a true identity. If you want to fix that, you bring in coaches who are passionate about running the football. Eric Bieniemy fits that description perfectly. Dan McCullough does too. Those two working together again could be a huge step in the right direction. But coaching alone isn't enough. You also need talent in the backfield. Running the ball more often doesn't help if the team struggles to create explosive plays, and that's exactly what happened last season. The Chiefs simply weren't generating big runs. So what's the solution? Go out and draft the most explosive running back in the entire 2026 class. Jeremiyah Love. And if Kansas City ends up picking 9th overall like many projections suggest, he could very realistically be on the board. When you combine the coaching hires with the draft position and the connections between these coaches and the player, it really starts to feel like a coordinated plan. Teams don't usually hire a coach who worked directly with a draft prospect just by accident, especially when that prospect happens to fill a major need. Now speaking of Eric Bieniemy, he also spoke to the media yesterday for the first time since returning to Kansas City. It wasn't a massive press conference, just a short Zoom session with reporters, but there were still a few interesting takeaways. First off, Bieniemy said he's extremely excited to reunite with Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. That part probably isn't surprising, but he did mention that he hasn't had a ton of conversations with them yet. Still, he said he can't wait to get back to chopping wood with those guys as soon as possible. And of course, we've already heard from Mahomes and Kelce themselves about how much they respect Bieniemy and how happy they are to see him back in Kansas City. So that reunion seems to be going exactly the way everyone hoped it would. Bieniemy also talked about how difficult it was to leave Chicago. The Bears had just made the playoffs, won a postseason game, and made it all the way to the divisional round before losing a tough game to the Los Angeles Rams. On top of that, he was working alongside Ben Johnson, one of the brightest offensive minds in football. But Bieniemy made one thing very clear: when Andy Reid calls, you answer. He said when Big Red reaches out, you don't ignore the opportunity. For him, returning to Kansas City felt like coming home and getting back to a place where he's already experienced a lot of success. Finally, Bieniemy was asked how he's changed during his time away from Kansas.